Well, beautiful people, best damn nation. It is Wednesday, and you know what time it is. It is the Best Damn Wrestling Podcast. My name is Brian Renegade, and with me, I have the best damn group. First of all, if you see this man in a dark alley, run. He will beat you up in front of your wife and or girlfriend and throw your ass in the trash can. He is the green-eyed bandit. He fights people. Sometimes he bites people. He's your mama's favorite wrestler, and he can whoop your daddy ass, the one and only Roosevelt. What's happening?
What's going on, B. Ryan? How you feeling today, brother man?
Oh, man, I'm blessed and highly favored. I appreciate you asking me that favor. Listen, we have a special guest in the building. I'm so excited. Roosevelt, could you please do the due diligence and introduce our esteemed guest?
Yes. And it is an honor and a pleasure to introduce this man who is a pioneer in the wrestling business. And people may not think so, and I don't care. If they can argue with me all they want, I'll punch them in the mouth. So they don't want to argue with me. They're going to know. They don't have to argue with me. They don't have to disagree, because once they see the work that this man has done, once they see and get to know the people that he have put into positions that they're in now, they would understand how special this man is. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just introduce to you Mr. Mike Quackenbush. What's going on, boss man?
Roosevelt, Brian Renegade, what's good?
Oh, man, listen, I was telling you offline, man, I wanted your voice. if I can harness your voice in a Thanos ring, that's what I would do, man. You have one of the best voices in media, man, and I see that you do a lot of stuff, man. I'm going to go ahead and fire off the first question, man. How long did it take you to get that media voice?
Well, I'll tell you the secret origin story of it. So, as a kid, I had a terrible speech impediment. People could not understand me when I spoke. So in elementary school, I took about 6 years of speech therapy. I couldn't pronounce D or TH or R. So it was almost impossible to understand what was coming out of my mouth as a child. So sometimes people say to me, oh, your voice, it almost sounds like an act. And you know what? Like, in a certain manner of speaking, that's correct, because I had to be trained to speak correctly. So my speech therapist might be very proud of the finished result, but there are definitely people who are like, oh man, you got like an AI voice. And I'm like, all right, my parents paid a lot of money for those lessons.
Absolutely, man. Well, it's a blessing to have you on this show, man, and Happy New Year's to you. Have you already started working on your New Year's resolutions?
Oh, man. So a little bit. I'm really big on goal setting, and I'll tell you just a little of my personal process, and it might be identical to yours, or maybe it's a little different, but I always try and set 2 goals, one that can be accomplished within 90 days, so that the momentum from that gets me to the long-term goal. So I feel good if I can nail the short-term goal, and I don't always nail it, but I try to harness that momentum to get me going toward a long-term goal. And like, I just repeat that cycle over and over and over again, because I have found if I don't have any goals that I'm working toward, I think I start to stagnate. I think I become kind of complacent. What's it like for you guys? Do you guys have something similar?
I myself do not. I just have a lifelong aspirations. Like, I don't have a resolution every year. I just know there's things that needs to be done, and I'm going to go put my force and my power into making it happen. So I don't really have like resolutions every year, but I'm always like, my family needs to make sure. I need to make sure my family's together. I need to make sure my career is on point. I need to make sure I'm going in the right direction and right path for what I need to do to satisfy my maker as well as my family. So that's my aspect.
Yeah, man, I'm a creator, and I'm a creative, so I love anything that I can do that's creative. So my mind is always constantly going. I always constantly have projects that I want to work on. But it really depends on where I'm at in the stage of my life, because I realize that, when I have a prayer life. I don't want to get too religious, but I realize that I can be a very powerful manifester if I put my mind to it. And so sometimes creating those goals, like you say, definitely help along with that process. If I set a goal and like, within this amount of time, I want to be able to do this. Sometimes you hit it. Sometimes, it may take a little bit longer, but once you get in that mode of just doing, then, the laws of nature kind of help you in that sense. So I'm kind of like you. I like to set goals and then try to work towards them. But, being a creative, I have a lot of stuff that I want to do at the same time. So
right. And I think a lot of people underestimate that they do what we do, right? They are creative pros. I think if any part of your life is converting your creativity into value for other people, you are a creative pro. And that is a very specific skill set that it can take years, it can take a lifetime to cultivate. It doesn't matter how it is that you deliver that value to people. Your medium could be podcasting, but if it's your creativity that powers that, you are a creator. You're a creative pro. And, my YouTube project, Till We Make It, is very much an expression of that, as well as some of my backstory. And I'll recap a little bit of it for you real quick. I broke into pro wrestling back in 1994. So when I first got in, this is 30 years back, I did not have a coach. I didn't have someone mentoring me. Like the most generous way to say it, I suppose, is I snuck in the back door of wrestling when no one was watching. But I didn't have anybody helping me. And those first couple of years of mine, I just floundered. I did not know what I was doing. The truth is, I was a danger to myself, and I was a danger to people in the ring. And I had some of my worst injuries in those first 3 years. The worst of which is I fractured my skull in a match that I was having out in the Pittsburgh area, and I had a seizure in the ring and had to be taken out on life support.
Wow.
So, that's the kind of stuff I was up against, which informs what I do on Till We Make It. Because there's an incoming class right now of new wrestlers, and they need information when they need it. They don't need it 3 years too late. That's when I got it. They need it to be available at their fingertips. So it's over 700 tutorial videos I've made now for Till We Make It, all come from that place. When I was starting out, I desperately needed guidance and information, and I had no access to it. So now, on the other end of 30 years of experience, man, I'm converting that hopefully into value that's going to help other people. But no matter what you do, whether you make YouTube videos or you podcast or you reach people in another way, something I've definitely felt these last couple of weeks is that feeling of burnout. And there's a couple ways I think you can deal with it, but I'm curious to hear from you guys. Like when you go through a cycle of that, whether it's with this project or any other aspect of your life, what do you do in that period of burnout? Do you have something you go back to time and time again that really works for you?
Speaking for me, if I'm feeling burnout, luckily I have a partner, so I'm married. So, I usually talk to my wife about it, and she gives me some really great insight because she comes from a completely different world than I do. And so I'll ask her for insight, and then sometimes that's the best thing to do is just ask people who know you, like, how can I get through what I'm feeling? You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it might be a little minuscule or trivial, what you're feeling, but sometimes it's very valid when you want to get to a certain point. You feel like you're stuck and stagnant. And sometimes I feel like the best way to get over that is helping someone else with their issue or problem. And then sometimes that, it'll come to you, oh man, you know what? Maybe I can do it like this. Or, getting a different perspective, like I said, like I asked my wife, or, I might ask some of my buddies that's in, certain industries, how do they deal with certain problems? And sometimes I can get advice from them and then apply it to my own situation or problem. So first is just ask somebody who knows you just for advice. And then secondly, it's just, try to get out of that funk, man. That's it's stinking there. It's not pleasant.
And then for me, I found that with professional wrestling, like I find that there's people who watch me so much that they get inspired by things that I do or things that I say that I don't even notice until they actually come up to me and say, "Hey, man, you have no idea how much you've changed my life. You have no idea how much you've inspired me to keep going and keep doing this." Or someone may come up to me and I just look down and say, "Hey, man, yo, I'm proud of you." And like, "Yo, you have no idea how much that means to me." Like, da da da. And then I have that man down there. That man down there will sometimes out of nowhere just reach out to me and be like, "Hey, man, this and this and this and this," and not even know what I might be going through. He just makes throw a word of encouragement to me, and I'm like, "All right, cool. You know what? Let me keep pushing." And so I have him to keep me pushed, to keep me motivated, and then I have people who actually come to me and say that I motivate them to make me move a little bit more further and push a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you saying that. You trying to get a Christmas present this year. That's what that
is. Absolutely. But actually, so what made you fall in love with professional wrestling in the first place?
I guess there were two things that I saw, and they were maybe a year or two apart. So the first time I was really exposed to pro wrestling, it was because a kid in my neighborhood, his family would get the big four pay-per-views back when there were just the big four. You had the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. And I grew up in Pennsylvania. So up here, we weren't getting the NWA on TV. It took a little while when cable came in before we got any of the Turner stations to see WCW. All we had was WWF. And I had taken a quick glimpse at one of these get-togethers they had, mostly because of the promise of free pizza. And I went there for my slice of free pizza, and what was on the screen at the time was Hulk Hogan against the Ultimate Warrior from Toronto. And this was not to my taste. And I know for a lot of people, this is like an indisputable classic, and it holds a special place for them because it's right in that nostalgia sweet spot for their wrestling fandom. Mm-hmm. But I watched about the first 4 minutes of that, and I was bored to tears. So I took another slice of pepperoni, and I dipped. So a little bit later, I happened to catch an episode of WCW when we got cable. And there was a guy coming to the ring. He had a red mask with crazy horns and a big silver cape. And he got in the ring, and he was doing flips. He dove out of the ring. He was like an acrobat. He looked like a superhero. And that was Jushin Liger. And after I saw Jushin Liger, I thought, is this what wrestling is? Because I'm really into this. That other stuff I saw, not so much. But this, man, this is pretty cool. But I never thought to myself, well, this is something I could try and do. Until May of 1993. And there was a night on Monday Night Raw where the 1-2-3 Kid upset Razor Ramon. Mm-hmm. And the 1-2-3 Kid, I felt like, looked more like me than any wrestler I'd ever seen. You know, if I think back to who some of the big names were in that same era, I mean, I've never looked like the British Bulldog. I've never had the build of the Barbarian. I don't look like those dudes. But the 1-2-3 Kid, he gave me permission to dream a little bit bigger. He said, "Kid, you could do this." And it wasn't until many years later when I got to meet him in person, I got to tell him that story. The reason I'm standing here today is because you gave me permission to dream bigger. And I'm sure, depending on where you're at, some part of your life was taken over by wrestling. You probably have a moment very much like that. It was a character who spoke to you, or a storyline that really grabbed your imagination, or just something that really touched your heart in an unexpected way and made you fall in love with wrestling. And, there's this old adage I'm sure you've heard. They say you should never meet your heroes. They're doomed to disappoint you. Mm-hmm. Well, I got to meet and wrestle with Jushin Liger. I got to meet the 1-2-3 Kid and tell him my story. And I'm here to tell you, I don't buy into that at all, because I've met just about all my heroes, and they were pretty awesome.
That's amazing. We got a question, but it actually segues into my next question. So I'm gonna ask their question first. From Matthew Rodriguez on YouTube says, "Hey Mike, I have questions for you. If Chikara was alive in 2024 and everything was normal, no COVID or etc., what wrestlers from WWE or AEW that never stepped foot in Chikara would you get?"
Wow, that is a good question. You know, right now, AEW has been showcasing a lot of the most incredible CMLL luchadors. And seeing them being exposed to the US market finally, when for many years they've been the cutting edge high flyers on earth. That's very inspiring to me. And I mean, it's easy to lump Lucha Libre in with high flying, but that's not entirely accurate. Excuse me. Mat guys down there, like Hechicero, they have tremendous mat guys as well. So when I see those luchadors coming up and breaking through in a big way in the US, part of me is a little jealous because that used to be the exact space Chikara occupied in the wrestling scene. If there was an international talent who was only beginning to bloom, you were likely to see them at Chikara first and foremost. And I'm excited because so much of the AEW roster are people that I've trained or came out of my program. So I'm excited to see when they get to mix it up with them. That's really cool. It makes me feel a little bit like a proud papa, you know?
Absolutely. And I've actually met you at a Chikara tryout years ago. Hakup Hammermeyer actually brought me in for a tryout. Yeah, this tells you how long ago that was. So we've actually had an opportunity to exchange, words and things like that. The next question is, one female wrestler that Chikara needed was timeless. Tony Storm. Mike, were you interested on bringing Tony Storm back in 2010, 2017, or 2018?
Yeah, absolutely. That would have been such a perfect fit, and especially the timeless character that she has done, right? She's mixed it up a little bit very recently. But that timeless character she was doing for a while would have really been a perfect fit with our aesthetic. We were never afraid to go a little weird, a little wacky, and to try and kind of push the boundaries out of what wrestling could be. It is eerie to me almost to kind of hear that echoed in the cold open to the first Monday Night Raw that was on Netflix, where they're really starting to kind of own what pro wrestling is. They're not trying to hide it anymore. And I think there's a chance here for us to expand in fascinating ways. And not all of them are going to be right for everybody. You know, as wrestling evolves and morphs and changes, there's going to be people, I think, in this Netflix era of WWE, just as one example, who are going to say, this isn't for me anymore. And I just kind of want to remind anybody who's ever felt that way about wrestling, there are so many delicious flavors of wrestling waiting for you to discover. Don't imagine that just because what the industry leader is making, or when any of the corporate level players, WWE, AEW, New Japan, what they are making and their subsidiaries are making, like NXT and ROH, that doesn't mean there isn't wrestling out there for you. If the wrestling you're watching, it makes you mad, right, or it leaves you feeling despondent or disillusioned, I'd go try another flavor. Not everybody needs to keep scooping out of the vanilla barrel at Baskin Robbins. Guys, there's other flavors to try.
Absolutely. You just made me hungry. Let's talk about your evolution real quick, because I have this picture. I started digging a little bit on your social media, but I saw this picture, man, of when you first started to now. Can you talk about your evolution as a wrestler from this picture in 1994? You look like a very innocent yet mischievous kid. You know what I mean?
That's pretty spot on.
And your transition to now, man, can you talk about your growth, your personal growth as a wrestler?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, coming in without a coach or a mentor of any kind started me off on a real rough path. I had to learn everything kind of on the job. And I know there were generations of wrestlers in one of the previous eras, right? We're in the social media era now. But if you came up even before the cable TV era, like the territory era guys, or the guys who came before them in the carnival era, a lot of them learned it all in the ring. It was on the job training. It's not like we have now where you go to a training center and someone teaches you the craft from a curriculum. It was you get in the ring and somebody punches you in the face and you figure it out real fast. But in those early days, and even after those early days, I had to make a lot of the mistakes myself. You know, I had to screw things up a whole lot. I learned the lessons mostly the hard way to get to where I'm at. And coming in with, to be plain about it, no real training whatsoever, gave me a deep appreciation now for how desperately we need good training. Because I think back on all the stuff that I had to swim through back in those days. If I'd only had a trainer, if I'd only had a coach, I probably could have come a lot closer to achieving my ultimate career goal, which was always to be invited to participate in the Super J Cup tournament in Japan. And here I am now, not too long from now, I'm going to turn 49. I've probably missed my window. The reality is I will probably never accomplish my ultimate career goal. And there are days, don't get me wrong, where I feel a sense of melancholy about that and a sense of regret. You know, I wish maybe I'd gotten some of the things right instead of getting them wrong. But that's also what adds fuel to the fire when I make Till We Make It videos, because I know there's a kid out there right now who's got a real fighting chance of getting to whatever his or her version of the Super J Cup is. And I want them to have the tools they need to get there. And that's how I ended up where I am now.
Yeah, man. You've trained, I think, thousands of students, man, through your program. What are some things that you've learned by teaching this next generation of wrestlers?
You know, it's been a really rewarding process. It's taught me a lot of my own shortcomings as a teacher and as a person, because boy, the incoming generation are not afraid to let you know. They will let you know loud and clear. So along the way, I think it's taught me this. I'll share two things with you, not to say there aren't more. Everybody learns differently. There are people, they're good oral learners, right? They need to listen. There are people that are visual learners. They need to see a demonstration. They're also the kind of people, they need to read it written down or they can't retain it. And there's every version of this possible. And you probably know this from when you were in school or college or whatever, right? There were certain ways you could learn certain topics, but maybe what worked for you on the math side was not what worked on the creative side of your brain, right? Like two halves of our brain do two different kinds of things. One side of our brain's good at facts and features and computations. And then we have our imaginative, creative, irrational side of our brain filled with feelings and emotions and inspiration. And each of them need to be stimulated in their own way, right? Only when we get that mix right do we really grow as people. So I've had to expand the way that I teach. The way that I learned wrestling, it's not good for all my students, and I got to adapt. And then I've also learned this lesson, which sometimes can be a little hard, but I know it to be true. When I went to college for 2 years, I went to the University of Pittsburgh before, we broke up and decided to see other people, basically. But when I was at the University of Pittsburgh, I learned this. Some teachers really clicked with me, like their style, something about them. We just clicked. But I also had professors, man, I did not get them, and they did not get me. And that doesn't mean that they were a bad teacher. It just meant that we weren't a good fit for each other. And having taught wrestling for the last 22 plus years now, or actually, today is the 23rd anniversary of the Wrestle Factory, my training facility. It's today, January 8th. It's 23 years. As you said, I've trained more than 1,000 wrestlers. I'm not a good fit for everybody. And sometimes you just gotta part ways. It'd be awesome if I was the exact right teacher for everyone who wanted to learn wrestling, but that's not real. That just isn't reality. And you know what? I used to really beat myself up about that. I used to feel like, man, there's something really wrong with me. I'm bad at this. I'm lousy at this. I don't think that's fair. I think the truth is there are teachers out there it could be education, but it could be life, right? It could be in your spirituality. It could be anywhere. Some teachers are a good fit, but not all teachers are a good fit for you.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the books that you've written. One of them is The 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer. And you're working on your 11th book right now. Let's talk about some of these books that you have out there that's helping the younger generation to find their better fit as from a teacher standpoint.
Yeah, my approach to wrestling is always that it is an art form first and a business second. So up front, I appreciate that's going to rub some people the wrong way. And if you're hearing that and you're disgusted already, like, these books are not for you. Like, I don't want to fool you. Don't get me wrong, I could use your dollars, but these books aren't for you. They're not. But I think as wrestling has evolved as a style of performing art here, not just in the US, but around the world. I mean, there's wrestling on every continent except Antarctica. It's everywhere. It's in all kinds of places you would never predict, right? I think soft ground wrestling in Uganda really opened people's minds up to that when they blew up a year or so back, They were wrestling on Mount Everest in Nepal last year. There's wrestling everywhere. And I look at it as an art form first, and how do we approach it from, are we satisfying the paying customers? And 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer was kind of my first attack at it from specifically that angle. Its follow-up, Toolbox, Building Better Pro Wrestling, is not only about the structure of your matches, but it's about the structure of wrestling promotions and how to structure your life as a performing pro so that you're healthy, so that you're taking care of yourself. Because there definitely, when I was coming up in wrestling, that was not a topic that was cool to talk about. Wrestling was for tough guys who had no problems or not any problems they couldn't solve with their fists. And I think, unfortunately, when I look back on the previous generations, the guys who blazed a trail so that one day I could be in the ring, I think a lot of them have just a world of issues left to unpack from years of living an unhealthy lifestyle. And that, yeah, I mean physically, but I also mean the mental side of things, right? We never addressed our psychological or emotional health wrestling in the 90s. There just wasn't room for it back then. So I'm glad that we've kind of evolved. The book I'm working on now, tentatively called Your Best Match Ever, is a framework where I really want people to understand what are the pieces underneath the performance have to accomplish if you want to take the audience on a ride that's going to satisfy them, so that at the end, it gets you the kind of ovations you've always dreamed about. Why are those underlying bones, or another way we could say that is, why is that skeletal structure so essential to performing pro wrestling? Because I do think that was one of the pieces it took me the longest to understand when I was coming up. And if you've ever seen some of my various early matches, like in that photo you showed, Renegade, where I looked like the innocent but mischievous kid, they're just piles of moves that make no sense. You might as well have been watching a video game on a Sega Dreamcast. It was just a pile of moves from the 90s that didn't go anywhere. They didn't build to a catharsis. It didn't resolve in a way that paid off so the audience could appreciate it. And getting those underlying pieces correct, that is the secret sauce of wrestling.
Oh, man. Well, can we watch a clip real quick of you getting some things correct, man? Because you flow like water in the ring. And I haven't seen too many people that have the fluidity that you have. And like you do have almost I want to say a luchador style, a little bit. But it has so much personality and flair, man. So I just want to show this clip, one of these clips real quick of you getting busy. You flipped the grown man over with your foot. How do you even think about doing something like that? That is absolutely great, man. One more before I get your comment, because you're known as the master of 1,000 holds, man, and I absolutely love your transitions into some of your submission holds.
Well, I think you can see it there. Believe it or not, I spent about 8 years training with a Mexican luchador who's wrestles under a mask as Skida. And I think in the ring, he is probably the most accomplished, just in terms of like number of holds, transitions, throws, takedowns, the most accomplished wrestler I've ever come across. But I love the fusion of styles. I love to steal something that's Japanese and marry it to something that was popular in the UK back in the 70s. And there's something beautiful from American wrestling that connects to this piece of Mexican lucha libre, and we make something new. And, you know, the US is the perfect melting pot for these places. You know, culturally, we're a melting pot of people. And I think there's so many, you know, we talked about flavors a couple minutes back. There's so many exotic flavors of wrestling when you start combining those elements and fusing them together, or finding the points of commonality and seeing how you can explore those to make wrestling that feels very different. To me, could you make wrestling that looks like the last Roman Reigns match, maybe? Well, yes, you probably could. But you know who's really good at that? Roman Reigns. And he's making that on the most beautifully produced high-budget wrestling TV show there is. So maybe I got to bring something a little bit different to the equation to show people a different flavor.
I have a quick little clip also. Let me see if I can get this to play correctly for you really quick to show the world how busy you could really get. Give me 1 second. And you know the clip, and this one is has circulated so much, and it's going to be this one right here.
Are you ready to get the dust into your eyes? How can I make you strong? How can I break this rusty song? So come and join the race. And let's get out, get moving, be a monkey in the end. With a flashlight, till I know it's right. Are you ready to take a ride? Yeah. Rocking down a dead-end street, I'm gonna shake the rocks all the way up with the beat. So come on, join the race. We're gonna taste the speed of life. Get closer, yeah. So let's get out, get moving. Be a monkey in the end. With a flashlight, turn on overdrive. Let's roll into the night. Let's get out, get moving.
Oh, man.
Right, that match does come back around. Tough to believe that one's 19 years old right now. And yeah, you know, barely 6 months goes by. It's usually the very finish of that. Usually like maybe the last, I don't know, 45 or 60 seconds of that match, which on YouTube, I think it's been watched a couple million times now. It amazes me that people still go back to that after all this time. Because a lot of really good wrestling sure has been made in the last 19 years. I don't know what you need to go back to see that one for, but I do think part of
good art doesn't die. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, great performance, a great performance, man. And some of the moves that you were doing, then I was like, oh man, I don't know. Do you stretch in the morning when you wake up? How do you do some of the things that you were able to do? Like, how long did it take you to feel confident enough to do some of the creative moves that you started doing?
You know, part of the beauty of it, at least thinking about that clip that we just watched parts of there, You know, that's arguably my most famous protege, Claudio Castagnoli, right? He was Cesaro for 11 years in the WWE. Having a guy like that who was so competent as a base underneath my flying really gave me the confidence to try things that with a smaller opponent who maybe could not catch, you know, my 175 pounds coming flipping at you from any old direction. And over time, you know, we just kind of built a confidence in each other that if he needed me to be somewhere, I could get my body there. And if I had to catch or rely on him to catch me and not kill me, he would be there. That trust takes time to build. And I often refer to him as my wrestling simpatico. I can't think of someone else like him where I often felt like we did not have to follow the notes that were exactly on the page. If we wanted to play a little jazz while we were out there, we could improvise. Even though, you know, thinking about that match that you just showed there, Roosevelt, there was no margin for error. Some of those things were so incredibly risky that if we were just the tiniest bit off, I would have just been, you know, dropped on my head or whatever. So yeah, we had something very unique. And I think back, you know, if we had maybe 50 or 70 matches, whatever it was, how very fortunate I was to share the ring with him, not only when, you know, I first met him in a warehouse in Zurich, Switzerland. This is long before I convinced him to move to the U.S. and train with me. Every chance I had to share the ring with him really was something very special. And I feel fortunate that I have a lot of students I feel that way about.
Hold up. Go back to what did you just say a few minutes ago? You convinced Cesaro to move from Switzerland to go to the United States to train with you?
That's right. So he left Switzerland to move to here to train at my Wrestle Factory. So he had come over once prior to visit the U.S. with his then tag team partner, and they were in an early tag team tournament that I promoted. But then through repeated trips over to Europe, specifically to Switzerland and Germany, we just kind of kept working on him. Myself and Chris Hero, we kept working on him until eventually he applied for the green card. He did get selected, and then he moved here to Pennsylvania to train with me full time. And I still go out to lunch on that one. People often ask, like, "Really, you trained that guy?" I was like, "Yeah," and I'm pretty proud of him.
Yeah, you ought to ask him for like an Amazon gift card for all your hard work. You know what I'm saying? That's awesome. Well, you just dropped, you know, Cesaro's name, man. Who were some other people who trained with you or trained at your school that the fans might know?
Sure. So some of the people that I've trained either in part or in whole would be Eddie Kingston, Orange Cassidy, Alexa Bliss, Malachi Black, Drew Gulak, referee Bryce Remsburg. Last year, Lady Frost signed with AEW, and a bunch of others that you probably know. And then a whole bunch that, you know, just the way it kind of works, only a handful are ever going to want to apply their trade up at the corporate level of wrestling. And then there's going to be several that they work only on the international circuit. And because the independent circuit, even here in the U.S., is so vast, easily there's more than 1,000 wrestlers I've trained that I would bet the majority of your audience they've never even heard of. That's just kind of the bell curve of it, I guess.
Talk about real quick. Talk about the factor of independent wrestling and guys getting their name out there to a very higher level of fan base and bigger corporate levels. Like, what would it take for an independent wrestler to be able to move up the ranks and get their names out there a lot better?
You know, I get asked that a lot, and I think the youngest generation of incoming wrestlers often imagine that they're like one viral clip away from getting the attention of the WWE or New Japan or AEW. And I mean, maybe there's a limited value to that, but there certainly isn't the value I think people mistakenly assign to having your 15 seconds of fame when your animated GIF is the thing everyone's sharing on Monday morning. That's very ephemeral. It's fleeting. It's going to be worth, one morning of notoriety, and then it's gone. It's what you can do over the long term, not so much what you can accomplish in the short term. Are you having consistently great matches? Do you turn up and exude professionalism? You know, what can you build for yourself over the long term that you are welcome in any country or any locker room anywhere out there? And, you know, I've certainly seen setbacks in my own career. Like I alluded to, most of the mistakes, I had to make them myself. Those hard lessons, I needed to learn them personally. And when you are faced with a setback, and any long career, doesn't matter what your given vocation or avocation might be, there's always setbacks. Give yourself a bit of grace. Try to right wherever you went wrong. Learn from your mistakes, and then get back to work. That's it. Just keep putting in the work. I know it's a cliche to say just keep showing up, but the moment you stop, or the moment you go and bury your head in the sand because you're embarrassed, because you screwed up, you made a mistake, you made a mess, believe me, I feel you. That's when you've really disappeared out of the conversation. So dust yourself off, get out there, and keep reminding people who you really are. No matter what that setback is, you are never your worst day. You are never your worst moment. You are so much more than that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. Got some comments, man. If you're lucky enough to be able to learn from Mike Quackenbush, take the chance. He is a genius. Oh man.
Thank you. I'm very flattered by that. Thank you.
What's
I'll make sure I send you that $5 Venmo. Thanks. Thanks for sending that in.
That was one of the guys from School of Morton as well. So you're familiar with him.
Absolutely. What are some of your goals for this year, man? What are some things that you would like to accomplish coming into this new year?
So, as I finished last year, I taught 107 seminars, which was far and away my best year. And I got to teach all over the world, both in person, like I got to go to Argentina, Chile, Trinidad and Tobago. And I also got to teach virtually. I got to teach a school in the Philippines, a group down in Brazil. I want to try and top it. There are even more people out there that I can reach, that I can connect with, that I can share my experience with, so they can have the benefit of learning from everything I've learned. I'd rather you learn from my mistakes than you have to go and make them yourself. So I want to get out there in a bigger way. And I also just want to kind of like see more of the wrestling world that I was ignorant of. I had no idea there was wrestling in Hong Kong. I didn't have any clue there was wrestling in Ecuador. So exploring these corners where wrestling has sprouted and blossomed, but outside of the spotlight of the US, Mexico, and Japan, which we've always thought of as the traditional hotbeds for wrestling, man, that really intrigues me. And part of it is probably like, I grew up watching a lot of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? So, boys, I'm ready to get out there.
Oh, man, we got another comment. Roosevelt, read this for me.
Absolutely. Will you love to return to Spain and go to Lucha Libre Rebellion and do a seminar in Spain in 2025?
Oh, well, yeah, Matthew, the answer to that is absolutely I would. So let's make sure you and I connect, because Europe is on my hit list, and that's coming together right now for early summer. A couple years back, I got to wrestle in Madrid. And I don't know if this was something your schools did, guys. When I was still in high school, if you took a foreign language course for 5 years, so if you got to the 5th year of Spanish or the 5th year of French, you got to go on a field trip your senior year to that country. Did your schools have anything like that?
No, my school, I'm from the country, man. My school ain't have enough money to go up the street. So that did not happen. But I live vicariously through you. So tell us about this amazing senior trip that you took.
So I got to go to Spain as an ignorant 18-year-old American. And all I knew was the U.S. So anything that wasn't the U.S., I was just weird and wrong to me. And I really hated it. And when I finally got out through wrestling and got to start seeing the world in 2003, and I got to, right now I've wrestled in 17 different countries. After I got to see more of the world, it made me realize I missed a great opportunity when I was younger. I really kind of rejected feeling the Spanish culture. And then I had an opportunity to go back as a wrestler and see Madrid, the same city where we had gone on that field trip when I was just 18 years old, and see it through very different eyes. I had grown a whole lot since then, seen a whole lot of the world, and going back, it could not have been a more oppositional experience. I just fell in love with the country of Spain going back there. So if the opportunity arises to visit once again, that's something I would really look forward to. Because that's not to say that I don't take something special away. Every time I get to see a new country or go somewhere new, experience a new culture, some part of it charms me. Even if it's a place I think I wouldn't spend my money to go back again necessarily, I take a little piece of it with me. But I feel like my love affair with Spain has only just begun.
Absolutely. When you go to Spain, man, just I don't know if they do drink margaritas in Spain, but have one on me. You know what I'm saying? That's probably one of my places that I would love to visit, man, is go to Spain. But I love how you talk about wrestling in different countries and the different flavors as you use of wrestling, man. Have you ever done anything hardcore? Like, have you ever done any hardcore wrestling?
I've never been in like a death match, so to speak. Have I been through a table once or twice? Definitely. Been whacked with a couple chairs here and there. There was one time I was in a match down in Texas. Someone hit me with a lawnmower. The lawnmower wasn't operational at that moment, but it was Spike Dudley, actually. Spike Dudley hit me with a lawnmower in Nowheresville, Texas, in front of about 50 fans who did not care. But no, I've never been in a death match, or, you know, if you see that kind of taken to its extreme, like what FMW is doing back in the 90s with those exploding barbed wire spider net double hell death matches, where at the end the whole thing would go off like a bomb. I've never been in one of those, and I must admit I have a very limited curiosity for that. But I suppose the short answer to that is no, not exactly.
Oh man, and I think the one of the questions that I wanted to ask, man, if you could get into the ring with anyone right now on any product, who are some of the names that you would like to wrestle?
It has been a long aspiration of mine to have a singles match with Christopher Daniels.
Ooh.
Christopher Daniels was coming up on the West Coast scene at the same time I was coming up on the East Coast. And there were a handful of times where a promoter had teased the idea that we would do a singles match, a sort of West Coast versus East Coast kind of thing. And every time this would come around, every time some wrestling company flirted with this idea, I would study up on all my Christopher Daniels. And I am a devout admirer of his work. I think he's an exceptionally smooth performer. And because so many times I thought that was going to be my wrestling Christmas present, but then that's never what I unwrapped on Wrestling Christmas Day, I really grew to yearn for that match. I know Chris doesn't do many matches anymore, and for that matter, neither do I. I think I wrestled 8 times last year. That might have been it. But if that opportunity were there, well, I'd do an extra set of stretching in the morning, and I'd make sure to pack my sparkly jammies, and I'd be right off to the arena to wrestle me some Christopher Daniels if I had the chance.
Absolutely, man. Well, you know, I do have someone. He's not quite Christopher Daniels, but before you came on this podcast, he said some disparaging things about you. I don't know. He just has this beef with wrestlers that come on this show. For some reason, I don't know. We have this segment, and I hate to put you on the spot, but we have this segment that allows you to do some verbal battling of sorts. We call this Battle of the Promos, and I want you to cut a scathing promo against Roosevelt. He said something about your great auntie that I don't think you would like. He said something about her toes. He said her toes throw up gang signs. Something like that. I don't know. But I want you to cut a scathing promo against Roosevelt in our segment, Best Damn Promos. Are you down for this, sir?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. Roosevelt, who got first? You want first, Roosevelt, so you can set the tone?
Let's let the guests have first.
All right, let's let the guests have first. I want you to tear him a new one. You know what I'm saying? All right.
Good.
Beautiful people, prepare yourself. We are going to war.
Roosevelt. Running your mouth about my great auntie? That takes some nerve. What a big man you are to run your mouth like that. And there'll be plenty of time for flapping your lips before the bell rings. But here's the thing. Once that bell sounds, it's just you and the master of 1,000 holds, Mike Quackenbush, the most technically proficient wrestler walking the earth today. And you're big, brother. You are big. You are strong. You're a little bit intimidating. But there's a golden rule about grappling I'm sure you've heard at least once before. Down on the mat, we are all the same size. And when I tie you up in one of those 1,000 knots, when you find yourself twisted into a pretzel that hurts so bad, the only words that can escape your lips are, "I quit." That is the appropriate response. So you can swallow those words about my great auntie. When the bell rings, all will be settled. And when the final bell sounds, it will be the master of 1,000 holds standing tall over you, Roosevelt.
Oh, snap. Those are fighting words. Oh, man. Great promo from the one and only Mike Quackenbush. Oh, he ain't got nothing for you, Mike. You can sit back and relax. You know what I'm saying? Roosevelt, what you got to say?
My name is Roosevelt, and I like to fight. And not only that, I like the fact that my opponent is a man of 1,000 holds. But what good is a hold if you've already been punched in the mouth, Mike? You step on this show and you want to tell the world that you have the ability to put me on the mat and make us the same size and put me in a hold that I could never get out of, which is one thing that you're not aware of, Mike. It's not only that I like to fight, that I like to study as well. You know 1,000 holds. I know 1,001. You can do 1,000,000 moves. I can counter 1,000,001. So no matter how many holds you have, Mike, when I hit you with this PYT, the only thing you're going to be holding is your jaw. When you wake up in the hospital next morning and you're looking at your family and you're asking them, what happened? Do me one big favor. Tell your auntie I said hi. Because my name is Roosevelt. And I like to fight.
Hold up with the disrespect. Wait a minute. Somebody book it. Hell, we might book it this year. Oh man, I'm putting my money on the master of 1,000 hoes. I can see you choking your ass out right now. Just go sleep. Go sleep. Oh man,
that was an honor to do that with you, Mike. Absolute honor. You have been an extreme pioneer of this wrestling business, and we got to give you your flowers. You know, you like you said, you put a lot of people in spectacular positions where they are today. If it had not been to you, they'd probably be still, I don't know, flipping burgers or something. Whatever it is that their mindset may have put, wherever their path may have took them, they probably wouldn't have gotten there if it had not been for you. So thank you so much for being on the show and doing everything that you've done for professional wrestling and guys like myself.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh man, listen, we like to do this segment at the end of each one of our shows called Final Word, and you have been dropping jewels this whole entire podcast. And I want people to go back and take a listen to some of the great things that you've said. But if you had to give a word of advice, some motivation to help people get through their week, something that's coming through you on your heart that you want to let the people know. Like Quackenbush, do you have a final word for the beautiful people?
I do. This has been top of mind for me the last couple of days. It's the first week of the new year. It's a great time to assess what you've done in the past and ask yourself what's been working for me and what's not. What do I need to do more of and what do I need to do less of in the new year? That's certainly been where I'm at. A lot of personal assessment this last week. And it made me remember this tenet that I want to share with you now. Having been in wrestling for 30 years, I feel like on some days, maybe I don't have anything left to contribute at this point. I gave my body to this for a really long time. I've given as much of my creativity and my passion and my imagination to it as much as I possibly could. And there are days where I feel like, man, I'm tired. I'm burnt out. Maybe I don't have anything left to contribute. Maybe I'm washed up, or I never was in the first place to get washed up later. Here's the thing, though. As long as you can find a way back to connect to the thing that you are passionate about, like we talked about at the beginning of this show, what's the thing that made you fall in love with wrestling? What's the thing that made you fall in love with the thing you're chasing right now in your life? Whether that goal feels like it's right around the corner, or maybe that goal feels like it's out there on the horizon, waiting for you to sail your ship toward it. Use that North Star and start navigating your way there, because your best work is still out there waiting for you to discover. It doesn't matter how many greatest hits albums you've logged in the past. Your best work is still waiting out there for you as you continue to get better, you get smarter, you get more reps in, you become better rehearsed, you become more mature, and you become more reflective on the things that have worked and on the things that have not. It's going to make you into a better version of yourself. Year after year, your best work is still waiting for you to discover it out there. Don't imagine that your best days are behind you, because that's not true. Your very best work is waiting out there for you to go and find it.
Amazing final word. Brian, you're on mute and you can't hear nothing you say.
Absolutely. That was a great word. Shit, put that on the fortune cookie. You know what I'm saying? Put that in the back of the Bible. Mike, thank you for that final word, my friend.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you giving me the platform to speak to all of your fans. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, man. Roosevelt, do you have a final word for your beautiful subjects?
Absolutely. And I'm going to steal this final word from the movie Sister Act. If you want to be somebody, you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. It's okay to make the mistakes. Mistakes is what make you. It's what brings out the character. It brings out the fire within inside of you. So make the mistake, learn from them, and improve. If you want to be somebody, you want to go somewhere, just wake up and pay attention. That's my final word for the best damn wrestling podcast.
About to have me say, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere. I got to go back and watch Sister Act. That was one of my favorite movies. Oh, man. Well, listen, Mike, man, let the beautiful people know what you got going on and where can they find you.
Sure. You can find me at my apartment. And if you want to stop by, in afternoon hours are best for me. It doesn't startle me in the morning. Thank you for that. Please bring coffee if you're coming. You can also find me on YouTube. My channel's called Till We Make It. So by all means, if you Google up Till We Make It, it's probably the very first thing that you're going to find. And it's the hub for everything that I make these days. Everything goes there first. So if you can find me there, you can find me just about anywhere. And in 2025, hopefully, coming to a wrestling training center near you. My plan is only to get out there more and more. I realize I do have a finite amount of time before my body may not be able to do this anymore, and I want to make the most of the years I got left.
Absolutely.
Oh man, I think you have found the fountain of youth, and you're not letting anybody know. You're talking like you're 49 years old, but you look like you're 25. Damn it!
It's all
I
in the
need your secrets.
moisturizer, guys. It's all
Moisturize.
moisturizer.
Yeah, coconut oil. Yeah. Good moisturizer. All right. Listen, I want you to help us in the show. All right. So I'm going to say we will see you next week on the next best. I'm going to point to you, and I want you to say the word damn. But I want you to pull that damn from the pits of your soul. You know what I'm saying? That the old Quackenbush. You got to bring the old Quackenbush all the way to the new Quackenbush and make them merge and give me this powerful damn. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Beautiful people, Best Damn Nation, we will see you next week on the next Best
Damn.
Wrestling Podcast. That was a good one right there. Yeah. I'm going to be scared at night. I'm going to read the Bible before I go to sleep. That was one of them demons came up. One of them Quackenbush demons came out. Look, thank you, my friend. Listen, you are a gentleman and a scholar. Thank you for what you have contributed to the wrestling world. And we get to enjoy some of the people who you have brought up into this thing. You are an assassin in that ring, even though you saying that you on your way out. I don't believe it. I still believe you got some fight and some boots to asses need to happen this year. You know what I'm saying? Even if we got to break you down. And anything that you post, my friend, we will repost it and reshare it. And I would definitely be checking out all of your content after this, man. So thank you for being on here. And you are now a member of the Best Damn Crew. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on. It means a lot.
All right. Anything for the crew? Roosevelt, you got anything for the group?
Nope, I'm good, man. Let's go ahead and sign off. I'm getting ready to go put boots to asses myself. I got stunt training. All right.
Beautiful people, we bid you adieu.